Most crochet patterns involve some hand sewing, and for many of us it's not a big deal. If you're confident and happy with hand sewing, that's absolutely fine. But for some people who aren't familiar with sewing, even if they've been crocheting for quite a long time, doing things that don't involve a lot of sewing, like making blankets, it can be a little bit intimidating. And because my sewing vocabulary is not really at the level of my crocheting vocabulary, I do think that in my patterns, sometimes that's an area that's a little bit lacking. So in this video today, I'm going to show you how to sew limbs onto your crochet toys. Hopefully that's something that then you can extrapolate into sewing the rest of the toys together, but just give me a shout if you need a bit more information afterwards. I'm going to share a work in progress here that I'm working on, and I'll show you on camera now how I'm going to sew the second front leg onto this cow, and then I'll play you a little bit of B-roll which takes you through the process of me sewing this limb on as well. So you'll have it from a couple of different camera angles, and it'll hopefully give you a really good overall view of how to get the job done. I, like all good grown-ups, keep my hooks and needles in a pencil case, and the needles themselves I keep in this handy little test tube, as it were. And there are 3 different kinds of steel needles that I use in crocheting. I do use plastic ones as well, but predominantly for blankets. For toys I almost always use the steel ones, and I'm just going to quickly show you the 3 different sizes. The first one is this. This is a thick needle, and I'm going to hold it against my hand so you can see. It's got a long open eye for you to thread through, so you get the thread through that very easily. It's also blunt at the end. There you go, hopefully you can see that. And I predominantly use these for sewing in loose ends on blankets and for pinning the part that I'm going to sew into place. So I literally stick it through the limb, and I'll usually use 2 or 3 of them to position it, and then that holds them nicely in place whilst I do the actual sewing with one of the other 2 needles. And depending on the material that I'm using, I'm either going to use this one here that's a very similar setup, but if you can see there, it's got a smaller eye, big enough for the thread to go through still, and it's slightly pointed at the end. Or I use this bent needle, and you can buy them deliberately pre-bent, or you can do what I did and bend it yourself. And what this allows is you to work through the stitches a little bit more easily. So without any further ado, let's have a look. So we're going to put the other arm. This is one of the great things about crochet. It's essentially a pin cushion at this point. Stick all your needles in him. We're going to stick this arm onto the toy. So the first thing that I would do, because one of the arms is already on, is make sure that I sit it symmetrically. So I'm going to do that by wiggling and wobbling it about a little bit. I'm going to count how many rows are above the arm at the shoulder. Let's have a look there. So that's 2. And so we want the same number at this side. That is a white tree frog who is a little bit annoyed that I'm sitting in front of his tank and not feeding him. 2 rows above the top. What we're going to do now is we're going to spin it to the back and make sure that it's evenly placed at the back of the toy as well. And that's really nice and easier to do on this cow because I've got this colour change here. So I can make sure that the back of the shoulder is level with the colour change at both sides of the toy. Once I'm happy with the position that it's in, I can get those thick yarn needles and I can stab straight through and attach it onto there. I don't do that every time. Sometimes I just do it by eye, but we'll do it this time for the demonstration. Now, you'll see that I've left a really long tail of yarn at the end of the magic circle here when I've closed it. So the first thing that I'm going to do, can you see there's still a little hole there, is I like to sew it closed. So I'm going to thread my needle. Sometimes you have to roll it round the end of the yarn there between your fingers, and you can make it a tiny bit wet if you want to, but it's not normally necessary. Right, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to go in and out at the end of the magic circle to close that magic circle up there. Make that really lovely and neat, so that the arm is nice and tight. And then what I'm going to do is make sure that it's still level. I normally close the circle first, to be honest, but I forgot. There we go. Yep, that's still level. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and out now on the toy between the shoulder and the body. So I'm going to stick my needle through and into the body there. What I'm going to do now is work out of the next stitch along on the body. I'm going to bring my needle all the way out. Ooh, that wasn't on camera. There we go. Bring the needle all the way out and pull it through. And then I'm going to put it through the next stitch at the top of the arm. There we go. And we'll pull that through as well. And so essentially what I'm doing is going through the shoulder of the arm, pulling it tight, into the stitch on the body that is adjacent to where I've just worked. I'm going to pull that up through the next one. This is where that bent needle can come in handy depending on the material that we're working through. Bring it all the way through. I'm going to take the needle back, through, upwards through the arm, like this, and pull it tight. And I'm going to work around the edge of the arm in the same way. I'm going to pull that out because I don't really need that at this point. So things to look out for whilst you're doing this. One of them is that you're not creating bulges in the fabric of the toy. So you want the arm to be still looking the same sort of consistency as it was when you made it. You also don't want to be pulling down any of the other parts of the toy in towards it. And what I mean by that is you can change sort of the angle of the neck and things like that if you put the thread and the needle through at a place that's not so ideal. So if we see there, look, it's always a little bit trickier working the inner arm. I'm going to pull that through there, but it does work. And you can also change the position of the arm as you go if you're not happy about it. If you decide, oh dear, that's not the right angle, you don't often have to undo the whole thing. You can twist it and manipulate it to quite a great degree whilst you're working. So it's always a good idea just to stop occasionally and make sure you're happy where you are. And do remember, if you get the whole arm on and you just think, oh, well, it looks wrong, you can just snip it off and start again. You don't have to keep it where it is. Yes, you know, you've wasted 15 minutes of your life, but when you're making something that potentially, hopefully, you or someone that you care about is going to be keeping for years to come, I think it's worth getting it right and feeling proud of the job that you've done. So there we go. We've nearly worked all the way around the edge of the arm now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that footage of when I put the other arm on, and that'll hopefully help you to see even more clearly how I work around the edge. And then I'll join you back here when you've had a look.
Doing just fine if you get out of my mind. I've been colonized by a slogan. This consumption's just another slogan. All in time, pretend that I'm fine. But I don't want to make myself useful if I'm only used to keep your boots full. I don't know how to make myself taller. Just keep blowing clouds above your border. I don't know how to make myself taller. Just keep blowing clouds. Just keep blowing clouds. I'll be doing just fine if you let me do mine. Shout all inside this malign interference. Applying weeds to the clearance. Your margin's unkind, you don't keep us in mind. And I don't want to make myself useful if I'm only used to keep your boots full. I don't know how to make myself taller. Just keep blowing clouds above your border. I don't know how to make myself taller. keep blowing clouds. Just keep blowing clouds.
So I hope that's a little bit more clear now in terms of how to attach amigurumi's limbs. The premise is really similar for all the different parts of the toy. Angling is another thing that makes a big difference. So we talked about how to position those arms, but things like where you sit, your horns on your cow and your ear position and tilts and all things like that, they also all build up to make a bigger picture part of how your toy actually looks. So let me know if you'd like to see any other attachment points, how to do them, if the camera angle wasn't quite clear enough, anything like that. I'm happy to film it again. I am constantly making toys, so it's no big deal. I can just come in and do another recording for you. I hope that was helpful, and happy crocheting.